The U.S. Valiant glided silently through the darkness of space near Jupiter's orbit. Captain Ethan Boyd sat in his command chair, watching the massive gas giant grow smaller on the main screen as they continued their patrol. "Captain, I'm picking up an unknown signal," said Communications Officer Grace Miller. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "It's not matching any Earth or colony signatures." Ethan leaned forward, suddenly alert. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for only 50 years. In all that time, they had found ruins and remnants of ancient civilizations, but never encountered another living spacefaring species. "Put us on yellow alert," Ethan ordered. "Lieutenant Sanchez, plot a course toward that signal, but keep our distance. Let's see what we're dealing with." Lieutenant Maria Sanchez nodded, her dark eyes focused on her navigation controls. "Course plotted, Captain. ETA 3 minutes." The bridge crew worked in tense silence as the Valiant approached the unknown contact. When they were within visual range, Ethan ordered the main screen to zoom in. "That's definitely not one of ours," said Science Officer Ben Kelly. The ship on screen was sleek and predatory-looking, with strange purple lights glowing along its hull. It was about twice the size of the Valiant, with what appeared to be multiple weapon ports. "Open a channel," Ethan said. "All frequencies, universal greeting protocol." Grace worked her console. "Channel open, sir." Ethan stood up straight. "This is Captain Ethan Boyd of the Earth vessel U.S. Valiant. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The being had gray-blue skin, 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and bony ridges where a human would have hair. "I am Commander Zivrock of the Talaxian Empire," the alien said, its voice translated by the ship's computer. "You are trespassing in space, claimed by our Emperor." Ethan kept his expression neutral despite his surprise. "We were unaware of any territorial claims in this system. We are from Earth, the 3rd planet from the star you can see in that direction." He pointed. "We would like to establish diplomatic relations with your people." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Diplomatic relations, with primitives who have barely left their homeworld. The Talaxian Empire has ruled the stars for 1,000 years. You are nothing." Before Ethan could respond, the alien ship's weapon ports began to glow. "They're powering weapons," shouted Security Chief Alan Reed. "Shields up." The Valiant rocked violently as the first blast hit their shields. Ethan grabbed his chair to stay upright. "Return fire," he ordered. "Target their weapon systems only." The Valiant's lasers fired, striking the alien vessel, but seemed to do little damage. "Their shields are much stronger than ours, Captain," Alan reported grimly. "Our weapons barely made a dent." Another blast hit the Valiant, and a console at the back of the bridge exploded in sparks. A crew member screamed in pain. "We can't win this fight," Ethan said, making a quick decision. "Prepare to retreat." "Wait, Captain," Lieutenant Maria Sanchez called out. "If we vent plasma from our port nacelle while making a hard turn toward Jupiter, we can use the radiation belts to mask our signature. They won't be able to track us." Ethan looked at his young lieutenant with surprise. It was a risky move, but it might work. "Do it," he ordered. Maria's fingers flew across her console. The Valiant turned sharply, spewing glowing blue plasma behind it like a smokescreen. The ship shuddered as it accelerated toward Jupiter's massive radiation belt. On the screen, they could see the Talaxian vessel firing wildly, its shots going wide as the plasma cloud confused its targeting systems. "It's working," Alan said with amazement. Minutes later, the Valiant was safely hidden in Jupiter's radiation belt, making repairs as the crew caught their breath. On the Talaxian vessel, Commander Zivrock slammed his fist on his command console. "Find them," he ordered his crew. "Impossible, Commander," his sensor officer replied. Their evasive tactic was unexpected. "We've lost them in the radiation." Zivrok's 4 eyes blinked in disbelief. These humans are more resourceful than they appear. Send a message to the fleet. We may have discovered a new species worthy of the Empire's attention. 6 months passed since the U.S. Valiant's narrow escape from the Selection ship. Earth had changed in that time. The once peaceful space stations now bristled with weapons. Ships that once carried scientists and explorers now carried soldiers and missiles. Major Frank Harris walked through the training hall of the lunar base, watching as new recruits practiced fighting in low gravity. His face was stern as he studied their movements. "They're getting better," said Colonel Amy Wright, coming to stand beside him. "But are they good enough?" Frank shook his head. "They need to be better than good. The Galaxians have been fighting wars in space for centuries. We've been up here for 50 years. On the other side of the base, Intelligence Officer Lisa Winters sat surrounded by screens showing star maps and signal data. For weeks, she had been tracking faint transmissions from the edges of the solar system. Most people thought she was wasting her time, but Lisa saw patterns where others saw only noise. "I've got it," she said suddenly, sitting up straight. Her fingers flew over her keyboard as she isolated a sequence of signals. "They're not random. They're using a shifting code based on prime numbers." She translated the intercepted messages, and her face grew pale. Grabbing her tablet, she ran through the corridors toward the command center. "Admiral Grant," she called out as she burst into the room. "I've decoded their communications. The Galaxians are coming back, and they're bringing a fleet." Admiral Susan Grant, the highest-ranking officer of Earth's Defense Force, looked up from the holographic display she had been studying. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes showed the weariness of someone who hadn't slept properly in months. "How many ships?" she asked. 30 warships, Lisa answered. "Their leader is someone called General Drazkor. From what I can tell, he's being sent to make an example of us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. "Then we'll have to disappoint him," Susan said firmly. She turned to her staff. "Implement Operation Scattered Stones. I want our ships hidden throughout the asteroid belt within 48 hours." While military preparations continued, scientists Jack Murphy and Karen Phillips worked tirelessly in their lab on Earth. Their workspace was cluttered with equipment and empty coffee cups. "Try it now," Jack said, adjusting a setting on the control panel. Karen activated the test shield. A blue energy field flickered to life around a small metal sphere. She picked up a laser pistol and fired at the sphere. The shield glowed brighter where the beam hit, then seemed to change color slightly. "It worked," Karen exclaimed. The shield adapted to the frequency of the laser. Jack grinned tiredly. "If the Galaxians used the same weapons as before, our ships might stand a chance now." Far from Earth, in the depths of space, General Drazkor stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. Unlike Commander Zivrok, who had first encountered humans, Drazkor had fought in 100 battles across the galaxy. His 4 yellow eyes were cold as he studied the reports from the scout ships. "So these humans think they can stand against the Empire," he said to his officers. "They are barely out of their atmospheric crafts, yet they dare to resist us." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Velnar, bowed slightly. The scout commander reported that they showed unusual tactical thinking. "General." Drazkor waved a hand dismissively. "A lucky maneuver, nothing more. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are fragile. They will break easily." He looked at the holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "Set course for the 3rd planet. We will crush their defenses quickly and add this system to the Empire. The humans will serve as a warning to others who might defy us." The great engines of 30 Galaxian warships flared to life, pushing them toward Earth at speeds humans could only dream of achieving. General Drazkor did not know that humans were at their most dangerous when cornered. He would learn soon enough. The Galaxian fleet entered the solar system like a storm cloud moving across a clear sky. 30 warships, each one bigger than anything humans had built, moved in perfect formation. Their purple energy weapons glowed with power as they passed the orbit of Neptune. On the bridge of his flagship, General Drazkor watched space unfold before him on a large viewing screen. His 4 yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the path to Earth. "Scans show no human vessels in our way," reported his sensor officer. "Their main fleet appears to be gathered near their home planet." Drazkor made a sound that might have been a laugh. As expected, they huddle around their world like cubs around their mother. They do not understand proper space warfare. The Galaxian fleet continued forward, passing the gas giants without slowing. As they approached the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Drazkor ordered the ships to spread out slightly. "Maintain alert status," he commanded. "These floating rocks could damage our smaller vessels." What happened next took the entire Galaxian fleet by surprise. From behind the larger asteroids, small human ships suddenly appeared. They were tiny compared to the Galaxian warships, but they moved with incredible speed. Before the Galaxian sensors could lock onto them, the human ships fired missiles and disappeared behind other asteroids. "We are under attack," shouted the weapons officer as the first explosions rocked the fleet. Drazkor gripped the arms of his command chair. "Impossible. How did they hide from our scans?" On one of the smaller human ships, Captain Donna Ellis smiled grimly as she watched her crew work. They had covered their ship with a special material that absorbed the energy from Galaxian scanners. Now they darted between asteroids, firing at the enemy ships, and then hiding again. "Hit and run, just like Admiral Grant ordered," she told her crew. "Don't stay visible for more than 5 seconds." All throughout the asteroid belt, human ships followed the same strategy. They couldn't destroy the larger Galaxian vessels, but they could damage them and slow them down. On the Galaxian cruiser named Voidcutter, alarms blared as a missile struck near its engine room. The ship began to drift, its power systems damaged. Sergeant Paul Rivera and his squad of 5 soldiers waited in their small boarding craft nearby. When they saw the cruiser's shields flicker and fail, Paul gave the order. "Now, before they can repair their shields." Their craft shot forward, attaching itself to the hull of the damaged cruiser. Using cutting tools, they burned through the hull and entered the alien ship. The inside of the Galaxian vessel was strange, with purple lighting and corridors much taller than humans needed. Paul and his team moved in the low gravity with practiced ease, pushing off walls and floating down corridors while keeping their weapons ready. "Remember your training," Paul told his team. "In 0 short bursts, aim for center mass." They encountered a group of Galaxian crew members trying to repair a damaged section. The aliens were clearly not prepared for boarding actions. When they saw the humans, they reached for weapons too slowly. Paul and his team fired first, their special guns designed for space combat making little sound in the thin atmosphere of the damaged ship. The Galaxians fell back, surprised by the humans' quick movements in low gravity. "These small creatures move like water in our ship," one Galaxian officer sent in a final message before Paul's team reached the engine room. 20 minutes later, Paul's voice came through on the human communication channel. "Voidcutter secured. We've set charges in their engine core. Returning to our ship now." On his flagship, General Drazkor watched in disbelief as one of his cruisers exploded from within. 3 of his other ships were badly damaged, and his perfect formation was broken. "These humans fight with no regard for conventional military doctrine," he said, his voice both angry and confused. "Call back our forward ships. We must regroup and reconsider our approach." For the first time in his long military career, General Drazkor felt something he had never expected: doubt. General Drazkor sat alone in his private chamber aboard his flagship. Around him, floating in the air, were dozens of small screens. Each one showed images of human history. There were ancient battles with primitive weapons, world wars with machines and explosives, and more recent conflicts in space. "Computer, show me again the human conflict called World War II," he commanded. New images appeared: tanks rolling across fields, soldiers fighting in cities reduced to rubble, ships battling on vast oceans, planes dropping bombs from above. Drazkor studied the images with growing concern. The Selaxian Empire had conquered many species across the galaxy, but most had only brief periods of warfare in their history. Humans, it seemed, had been fighting continuously since they first picked up sticks and rocks. No wonder they adapt so quickly, he muttered. They've had more practice at war in their short history than some species have in 10 times that long. His communication device beeped. "General, we've detected movement from the Earth fleet," reported his second-in-command. Drazkor switched off the history screens and hurried to the bridge. On the main display, he could see human ships moving out from Earth orbit in an unusual pattern. "They're attacking. They should be cowering behind their planet's defenses," Drazkor said with surprise. The human fleet was now led by Commander Nicole Daniels on the newly upgraded U.S. Defiant. She stood calmly on her bridge as her ships moved into position. "Remember the plan," she told her captains over the communication channel. "Unpredictable patterns only. No ship follows the same course twice." Captain Henry Washington on the U.S. Intrepid acknowledged the order. His ship darted forward, then suddenly changed direction in a way that seemed to defy physics. The Selaxian targeting computers struggled to predict where the human ships would go next. "They can't lock onto us properly," Henry told his crew with a grim smile. Just like Admiral Grant predicted. The human ships began firing their new weapons, missiles that changed direction in mid-flight and energy beams that adjusted frequency to penetrate Selaxian shields. On one of the smaller human ships, Lieutenant Ryan Garcia had been at his weapons station for nearly 2 days straight. His hands were steady on the controls despite his exhaustion. When a junior officer offered to replace him, Ryan shook his head. "Not yet. I know the timing patterns now," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. He fired another perfectly timed shot that slipped through a gap in a Selaxian cruiser's shield rotation. Drazkor watched in growing frustration as his fleet struggled against the smaller human force. His ships had better technology and more firepower, but the humans were fighting in ways his tactical officers had never seen. "How are they maintaining combat effectiveness?" he demanded, pointing to sensor readings of one human ship. "That vessel was damaged 12 hours ago, yet its crew continues to fight at full capacity." His medical officer studied the scans. "The humans on that ship show signs of extreme physical stress, General. By our standards, they should be unable to function. Their bodies are running on emergency reserves." "That's impossible," Drazkor said. "No species can push themselves that far." Yet the evidence was before his eyes. The human ship, despite heavy damage and a crew that should be collapsed from exhaustion, continued to fight with precision and determination. A tremendous explosion rocked Drazkor's flagship as a human missile found a weak point. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Withdraw to a safer distance," Drazkor ordered, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in the smoky air. "We need to reconsider our entire approach to this species." As his ships pulled back, Drazkor stared at the image of Earth on his viewing screen. "Their bodies should have limitations," he said quietly. "How do they continue when they should be broken? These humans defy understanding." For the first time in the 1,000-year history of the Selaxian Empire, a fleet had been forced to retreat from a supposedly inferior enemy, and General Drazkor, the Empire's most decorated military leader, found himself asking a question he had never considered before. What if we cannot win? 2 weeks had passed since the first major battle between human and Selaxian forces. The situation had changed dramatically. More Selaxian ships arrived daily, forming a tight blockade around Earth. No ships could get in or out. The humans were trapped. General Drazkor stood on his bridge, looking at the holographic display of Earth. His initial shock had turned into cold determination. If the humans would not be defeated by direct combat, they would be starved into submission. "The blockade is complete, General," reported his logistics officer. "We have ships monitoring all possible routes. Nothing larger than a small meteor can get through without detection." "Good," Drazkor said. "Now we wait." Their food supplies will run low within a month. Their fuel for power plants will be gone in 2. They will surrender or die. Either outcome is acceptable to the Empire. On Earth, the situation was indeed becoming dire. In the Global Defense Headquarters, located deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, military and civilian leaders gathered to assess their resources. Major Olivia Chen stood before the assembled group, her face tired but determined. As the global coordinator for rationing efforts, she had been working around the clock. "We've converted all available land to food production," she reported. "Vertical farms have been established in most major buildings. We're using LED lights powered by emergency generators. With strict rationing, we can stretch our food supplies for 6 months, not the 1 month the Xalaxians are expecting." Admiral Grant nodded. "Well done, Major. What about fuel?" "We've shut down non-essential power grids. Most civilians are using only 4 hours of electricity per day. It's not comfortable, but people understand what's at stake. Around the world, humans adapted to their new reality. Families shared homes to conserve heat. Communities created shared cooking areas to save fuel. Children attended school in the mornings only, using natural light instead of electric lights. No one complained. Everyone knew that their discomfort was temporary. Either humanity would win, or there would be no humanity left to suffer." Below the surface of Earth's oceans, hidden from Xalaxian scanners, Sergeant Kylo Martinez and his special operations team prepared for their mission. They had been living in underwater habitats for 10 days, breathing recycled air and eating minimal rations. Final equipment check. Kyle ordered his team of 12 men and women. They inspected their specialized underwater propulsion devices and weapons designed to work after transitioning from water to space. "Remember, once we launch, there's no coming back until the mission is complete," Kyle told them. "The ocean exit point will be watched after our first attack." No one hesitated. They had all volunteered for what might be a one-way mission. On his flagship, General Drazkor was growing increasingly confused by the sensor readings from Earth. "Their power usage has dropped by 70%, he told his officers. "But we're not detecting mass deaths or signs of collapse. How are they functioning with so little energy?" His science officer shook his head. "Unknown, General. By our standards, their society should be breaking down into chaos by now." Before Drazkor could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple explosions reported on our southern blockade ships," shouted his tactical officer. "Small human attack craft have somehow bypassed our detection grid." "Impossible." Drazkor slammed his fist on his command console. "Where did they come from?" The answer came moments later when sensor data showed the human craft rising from Earth's oceans, using the planet's vast water bodies as hiding places. "They're supposed to be weakening," Drazkor said as reports of damaged Xalaxian ships continued to come in. "Instead, their attacks are becoming more coordinated." He opened a secure channel to the Xalaxian Emperor, something he had never done during a campaign before. "Your Eminence," he said, bowing his head to the screen. "I must report that the human situation is not proceeding as expected. These creatures are displaying resilience beyond anything we have encountered before." The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you saying you cannot defeat them, General Drazkor?" "I am saying," Drazkor replied carefully, "that defeating them may require resources beyond what was initially allocated. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered before." A month into the blockade, all communication from Earth suddenly stopped. The constant radio chatter, the encrypted military signals, the civilian broadcasts. Everything went silent within a few hours. General Drazkor observed this development with suspicion rather than celebration. After his report to the Emperor, he had received reinforcements. His fleet now numbered over 60 warships, forming an impenetrable ring around the blue planet. Could it be a trap? He asked his officers during their daily strategy meeting. "Unlikely, General," said his intelligence officer. "Our sensors show massive power failures across their planet. Their orbital defense platforms have gone dark. Our latest scans show declining heat signatures in their major cities. Drazkor paced the bridge, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he thought. These humans have surprised us at every turn. Why would they simply give up now? Nevertheless, after 3 days of complete silence from Earth, even Drazkor began to believe that perhaps the humans had finally broken. Their resources must have run out faster than their Major Chen had calculated. Prepare the final assault, he ordered. We will take their orbital stations first, then establish landing zones on each continent. The Emperor wants this planet secured within a week. The Selaxian fleet moved closer to Earth, weapons ready. They expected no resistance. The first wave approached the dark, silent orbital stations that hung like dead metal skeletons above the planet. Captain Diana Scott sat in complete darkness aboard the International Defense Station Alpha. Around her, her crew waited in silence, breathing through special masks that eliminated the vapor from their breath, vapor that might be detected by sensitive Selaxian thermal scanners. For 3 weeks, she had overseen the development of a new stealth technology. Every ship and station in Earth's fleet had been coated with a special material that absorbed radiation and heat, making them nearly invisible to Selaxian sensors. "They're approaching the outer marker," whispered her sensor officer, who was watching a special screen designed to emit almost no light. Diana nodded and pressed a button on her command chair. Across the entire Earth defense network, a simple message flashed on emergency systems. Execute Lazarus Protocol. Suddenly, all around the approaching Selaxian ships, the supposedly dead human vessels came to life. Weapons powered up and defense systems activated. What had appeared to be abandoned orbital platforms revealed hidden weapon ports. "Open fire," Diana ordered. The Selaxian fleet, caught completely by surprise, took heavy damage in the first few minutes. Ships that had approached carelessly, expecting no resistance, now found themselves surrounded by fully operational human vessels. On one of the smaller defense platforms, 19-year-old Private First Class Tim Allen worked frantically to keep his weapons system operating. The platform had taken a direct hit, knocking out the automated targeting systems. "Manual targeting engaged," he reported to his commander. "I can still fight." For the next hour, Tim manually calculated firing solutions and operated the weapons by hand, something that had only been covered briefly in his training. His hands blistered from the heat of the emergency controls, but he did not stop. On Earth, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Davis coordinated a complex multinational attack. Forces from a dozen nations, speaking different languages but united in purpose, executed perfectly timed maneuvers that confused Selaxian fleet communications. "The Chinese squadron should attack now," Eric said, checking his watch. Right on schedule, ships from Earth's Asian Alliance appeared behind the Selaxian right flank. On his flagship, General Drazkor watched in disbelief as his carefully planned formation fell apart under attack from all sides. Ships that should have been dead were fighting with renewed strength. Enemies that should have been starving were executing complex military maneuvers. "Status report," he demanded. "We've lost 12 ships already," his second-in-command reported, his voice shaking. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once. Drazkor stared at the tactical display, watching as his superior force was being systematically taken apart by the supposedly defeated humans. "These human soldiers are unbelievable," he exclaimed, slamming his fist on his command console. "They should have broken weeks ago. How do they continue to fight when all logic says they should have surrendered?" For the first time in his military career, General Drazkor felt something new: respect for an enemy. The battle around Earth turned against the Selaxians with shocking speed. Within hours, 20 of their ships had been destroyed or disabled. The others were retreating to safer distances, trying to regroup. Only General Drazkor's flagship remained in the thick of the fight. As the largest and most powerful vessel in the Selaxian fleet, it had withstood the human attacks better than the others. But now it was surrounded by 5 human warships. "We should retreat with the rest of the fleet," General urged his second-in-command. We can return with even more ships. Draskor stood firm at his command station. No, the Emperor would have me executed for such a disgrace. We will continue to fight. On the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, Captain Linda Powell watched as her ship and 4 others encircled the massive Scilaxian flagship. Their shields are weakening, reported her tactical officer. One more coordinated strike should bring them down. Linda nodded. Tell all ships to fire on my mark. She paused, then said, Fire. 5 powerful energy beams struck the Scilaxian flagship simultaneously. Its shields flickered, then failed completely. Boarding teams ready, Linda said. This is our chance to capture their commanding officer. It could end this war. Linda led the boarding party herself. 20 of Earth's best soldiers in space combat armor launched from the Liberty in small, fast shuttles. They landed on the hull of the Scilaxian flagship and cut their way inside using special tools. The interior of the Scilaxian ship was chaos. Damage from the battle had knocked out internal sensors in many sections. Smoke filled some corridors, and emergency lighting cast strange shadows. Stay together, Linda ordered her team. Head for the bridge. According to the schematics we captured earlier, it should be 3 levels up. They encountered resistance along the way. Scilaxian soldiers were taller and stronger than humans, but Linda's team moved faster and worked together with practiced precision. They stunned some Scilaxian crew members and locked them in storage rooms. Others they avoided by using alternative routes. After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached the entrance to the bridge. Linda signaled her team to prepare for the final push. Breach on 3, she whispered. 1, 2, 3. They burst onto the bridge, weapons ready. Most of the Scilaxian officers surrendered immediately, dropping their weapons when they saw the determined humans. Only General Draskor remained defiant. I will not surrender to primitives, he declared, drawing a ceremonial blade from his uniform. Linda stepped forward, removing her helmet so the alien could see her face. There's no need for more bloodshed, General. Your fleet is retreating. Your ship is disabled. It's over. Draskor lunged at her with surprising speed for his large size. But Linda had trained in multiple forms of Earth combat since childhood. She sidestepped his attack and used his momentum against him, sending him crashing into a console. Draskor rose quickly and attacked again. This time, Linda blocked his blade with her armored forearm and struck him with a precise blow to a vulnerable spot she had learned from studying Scilaxian physiology. The general staggered back, his 4 eyes wide with shock. How did you know that weakness? Our medical files are encrypted. We learn quickly, Linda replied simply. After 2 more failed attacks, Draskor finally remained on the floor, breathing heavily. For the first time in his life, he had been defeated in personal combat. Your species barely left your planet, he said, looking up at Linda with a mixture of anger and curiosity. How did you defeat our 1,000-year empire? Linda looked down at the alien general, her expression serious but not triumphant. We've been fighting ourselves much longer than that. War is part of our history. We never wanted to fight you, but when forced to defend ourselves, humans always find a way. Draskor slowly placed his blade on the floor. I surrender my ship and myself to your custody, Captain. You have earned that much. As Linda's team secured the bridge and contacted Earth with news of their victory, Draskor watched the humans work together efficiently despite their differences in size, gender, and apparent national origins. Truly unbelievable, he murmured to himself. 5 years had passed since the day General Draskor surrendered on the bridge of his flagship. Earth had changed dramatically in that time. Scilaxian technology, shared as part of the peace treaty, had helped humans solve many of their biggest problems. Clean energy was now abundant. Disease was being conquered. The stars seemed closer than ever. Draskor stood by a large window in the United Nations building in New York, looking out at the busy street below. Unlike most Scilaxians who found Earth's gravity uncomfortable, he had chosen to adapt to it. He now moved among humans with an easy grace that surprised both species. "General Drazkor," said a voice behind him, "the Security Council is ready for you." Drazkor turned to see Admiral Ben Peterson, once his enemy, now one of his closest human friends. The Admiral had been the lead negotiator for Earth during the peace talks. "I'm no longer a general, Ben." Drazkor reminded him with what humans had learned was a Xalaxian smile. "Ambassador is my title now." The two walked together to the council chamber where representatives from Earth's nations and several Xalaxian diplomats waited. The room fell silent as Drazkor took his place at the speaker's podium. "5 years ago, I came to this system as a conqueror," Drazkor began. "I believed, as all Xalaxians did, that our empire had the right to expand without limit, that other species existed only to serve us or be eliminated." He paused. "I was wrong." Around the room, humans and Xalaxians listened carefully. Many had lived through the short but intense war. All knew how close both species had come to destruction. "Today I bring news from the Emperor himself," Drazkor continued. "The Xalaxian Empire officially recognizes Earth and all human colonies as sovereign and independent. Furthermore, the Imperial fleet will protect human ships as they explore beyond your solar system." The room erupted in applause. It was more than anyone had hoped for. From enemies to allies in just 5 years, a transformation as surprising as it was welcome. Later that evening, Drazkor sat in a small restaurant with Admiral Peterson and several other humans who had fought against him during the war. They shared a meal and stories, their former hatred replaced by mutual respect. "I still don't fully understand how this happened," said one of the human officers. "How did we go from trying to kill each other to this?" Drazkor considered the question carefully. "I believe it started with respect," he said finally. "In all our conquests, we never faced a species that fought as you did. You should have surrendered when we blockaded your planet. You should have broken when your resources ran low, but you never did." He looked around at the humans. "After Captain Powell captured me, I was prepared for execution or imprisonment. Instead, you treated me with dignity. You allowed me to communicate with my people. You even invited me to help draft the peace treaty." Admiral Peterson nodded. "We learned from history that lasting peace comes from mutual respect, not humiliation of the defeated." In the years that followed his capture, Drazkor had studied human history extensively. He had been shocked by the brutality humans had shown each other throughout their past, but he had been equally impressed by their capacity for forgiveness and growth. "I have written my memoirs," Drazkor told the group. "They will be published throughout the Empire next month." "What did you title them?" asked a human scientist who had helped adapt Xalaxian technology for Earth use. "They turned me from their greatest enemy to their staunchest ally," Drazkor replied. "I wanted all Xalaxians to understand what I learned here." The next morning, Drazkor visited the new Joint Military Academy outside Washington, D.C. There, young human and Xalaxian cadets trained together, learning from each other's strengths and traditions. He watched as a human instructor demonstrated Earth fighting techniques to a group of young Xalaxians, while nearby, a Xalaxian teacher explained their advanced navigation systems to human students. The future, Drazkor thought to himself, is more promising than either of our species could have imagined alone. As he prepared to return to his duties as ambassador, Drazkor reflected that the most unbelievable thing about humans wasn't their ability to fight against impossible odds. It was their capacity to make peace with those who had once sought to destroy them.